Hello from Jihad and the World, a podcast that explores the intersection of Western and Islamic cultures. The author is Mark Silinsky of Kensington Security Consulting, which provides education on national security. Today's episode is called, Who is Joe Kent, and Why is he so angry at President Trump? It examines the controversy surrounding the resignation of a leading intelligence official. Joe Kent, former director of the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, was an impressive multi-tour soldier. Years ago, this former Green Beret, an aspiring Republican candidate, caught the attention of leaders in the re-elected Trump administration. His efforts to win a seat in the House of Representatives were unsuccessful. However, Republican leaders liked what they saw in his Special Forces combat service and his hard-fought participation in 11 combat missions, mostly in Iraq. After retiring from 20 years of Army service, Kent became a paramilitary officer with the CIA and served as a counterterrorism advisor to Trump's 2020 reelection campaign. He appeared regularly on TV shows and podcasts to promote Republican candidates. With his stellar record, he was nominated and confirmed to lead the NCTC, an agency responsible for analyzing terrorist threats. His movie star look certainly didn't hurt. But from the start, all was not well. Even before he took office, political operatives revealed uncomfortable ties to people and groups many Americans consider extreme and unsavory. Some ties were exposed by opposition research teams during Kent's congressional aspirations. Others surfaced during Kent's confirmation hearings. According to the Associated Press, Kent acknowledged that during one of his 2 failed congressional campaigns, he consulted Nick Fuentes, who proclaimed that Hitler was awesome, Hitler was right. During his 2022 House campaign, Kent employed Graham Jorgensen, a member of the Proud Boys, as a consultant. He also worked closely with Joey Gibson, the founder of the Christian nationalist group Patriot Prayer. However, Kent claimed that these ties were tenuous and did not shape his view of the world or America's role in international relations. He was also prone to impulsive and impractical comments. He called for defunding the FBI and impeaching President Biden. But the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, liked him. Others, a bit more cynical, were assuaged by his retractions of those early hot-headed comments. But he was not a good fit for the NCTC, and he felt morally compelled to resign as its director. This shocked many at the center, though others were not entirely surprised. So, what happened? Why didn't it work out? Reason 1. The American-Israeli attack on Iran was unethical, unnecessary, and unexpected. By his account, Kent resigned because he could not morally support the president's decision to attack Iran. He argued that Iran posed, in his words, no imminent threat to the United States. This was an extremely significant charge. Under international law, military attacks are only allowed if the threat is imminent or self-defense is required. Kent argued that this was not the case. Reason 2. Opposition to the America First policy of keeping out of long, non-essential wars. He believed the war in Iran contradicted these principles and marked a return to an era in which neoconservatives, Republican interventionists, controlled policymaking. Reason 3. This was a war for Israel and not the United States. He claimed that the hidden hands of a pro-Israel lobby controlled the White House. Kent argued that the U.S. was pushed into conflict and that public perception was manipulated by Zionists. Reason 4. This reason was driven by the earlier 3 reasons. He felt he could not participate in an immoral activity. He stated, "I cannot, in good conscience, support the ongoing war in Iran." He continued that many others in the intelligence community agreed with him, but were cowed into silence. Reason 5. Kent also suggested that intelligence narratives were manipulated. By whom? If he was clear, we are unaware of it. He did say that the decision to attack the nuclear sites was driven by intentionally manipulated intelligence claims. So, Kent claimed that these were the 5 basic reasons he left government service. We, at Kensington Security Consulting, will take him at his word that these stated motives were his actual motives. But they raise some questions for us. First, from what we can tell, he was adamant that there was no imminent threat. He made this claim to Tucker Carlson soon after he resigned. But exactly what did he mean? Did the threat have to be both existential and near immediate to be imminent? If the intent and ability to craft nuclear warheads were revealed, would that constitute an imminent threat? Would the only acceptable definition of imminent threat be the certainty that nuclear weapons would be detonated against the United States within several hours? We are disappointed that his use of the word imminent was not clearer. The White House claimed that Iran was very close, weeks, maybe months, to achieving a nuclear weapons capability. Perhaps reasonable people could debate whether this was imminent. However, many observers of nuclear proliferation note that no country enriches uranium to 60% for peaceful use. And once enrichment reaches that level, the remaining step to weapons grade is short. Some might claim imminent. Also, Kent claimed that Ayatollah Khamenei issued a religious edict, or fatwa, against nuclear weapons. Perhaps. But many spurious fatwas have been used to beguile credulous Westerners. Further, there is the Islamic practice of taqiyya, the use of falsehoods to disguise actual intentions. It is hard to believe that the director of the NCTC would be unaware of this. Kent bewailed President Trump's drift away from isolationism to fight, in his judgment, Israel's war. He referred to a malignant, hidden control that forced his hand in deciding to go to war. However, he did not explain why 7 successive U.S. presidents assured the electorate that, under no circumstances, would they allow Iran to have nuclear weapons. Further, many people were not convinced that the Israeli Prime Minister or anyone else had the ability to force Donald Trump into war. Many Americans see Donald Trump as fiercely independent. As with his claim of lack of imminence, Kent does not explain exactly how Israel, or a domestic cabal in the United States, forced the president's hand. He accused Israel of dragging the United States into war with Iraq, a war that tragically took his wife's life. But what evidence has he offered to support the claim of Israeli control? By most accounts, Israeli leadership warned that Iran, not Iraq, posed the far greater threat to both the U.S. and Israel. Colin Powell's United Nations presentation relied on Western intelligence, not Israeli sources. Ariel Sharon called the war against Iraq the wrong war, and he was not alone in that assessment. Many Israeli leaders agreed, both publicly and privately. Kent also seems dangerously naive about his assessment of Ali Larijani, Iran's leading security official, who was killed by Israel in March 2026. He referred to Larijani as moderate. Moderate? Really? Compared to whom? When did Larijani break with the orthodoxy of the Islamic Republic? So, what is to make of Kent and his resignation? We at Kensington are confused. Finally, if he was convinced that President Trump was under the operational control of Israel or its agents, why wouldn't he stay in his position and inform Donald Trump that he had been captured? Why wouldn't he show evidence of the plot? We have our ideas, but we would like to hear yours. This concludes this episode of Jihad and the World. Our upcoming book, Cauldron of Terror, Hamas, Israel, and the World, will be available for purchase in July 2026. This podcast does not represent the official position of the United States government. Until next time, goodbye from Kensington Security Consulting.